across the yard of Westmar, the front yard, to get to the gardens out near the street. Because they did not want to put another hydrant pump in up there. There is one, but here she is dragging 7 hoses across the front yard. Well, guess what? We are all now disabled, over 80, and 3 years ago, Corey Eisenbrand sent a letter to, I think, well, I'll say the city council, but I think it went to the park board, notifying them that in 2 years' time, which has passed, we would no longer be maintaining the Westmar Gardens and Park. We can't. We have killed ourselves up there. So nobody picked up the ball. This year, basically the only thing that got done was mowing. Now mowing, to my definition, is probably not the same as your definition, mowing the parks. Anyway, I have seen, and I'm gonna make a list here. The mowers go over and make a mess. Paper being the big one. Pop cans, glass, sweaters, books. Instead of getting off the mowers, and they all have pails on the back of them, and using their pick and putting it in the trash can on the back of the mower. I don't know what their training is. I have no idea what the job criteria is, but it's not good. And it is very disheartening when those of us that have worked very hard for a very long time to keep it maintained have to look at that kind of stuff happening. I'm going to finish up quick with one kind of funny story that my husband would tell me to tell anyway. You know, I had a white dog and I walked him twice a day on Westmar campus. One morning in the summer, the sun was just coming up and I was over there and I was coming across the diagonal and I thought, what is going on at Veterans Memorial? The wall and the copper roof building. I could tell there were people there. And I thought, oh, what is going on at this hour of the day? So I quietly crept towards it. This is the truth. There sat some of our Gothic community up on the wall, kicking the stained glass that Bogan Reefs built in there. Beautiful, yes. But out on the sidewalk was a flattened, in front of them, was a flattened black cat and a full moon. Now, I don't care how you want to add that up, but by then I had called the police. And God bless them. I don't remember the fellow I spoke to. He said, Dixie, walk north, go towards the church, and take the long way home. We'll handle it. They did. It never happened again. But it gives you an idea of some of the stuff that goes on up there. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dixie. Anyone else? There we go. That looks like a Westmar jacket.
This is more of a question of,
Name.
oh, sorry. James Schroeder, 1228 2nd Avenue Southwest. More of a question and an inquiry as to where I can find this information. As I understand it, the city of Le Mars has given a tax break to all the apartment builders and developers, a 10-year tax break. How much money is the city losing every year because of this tax break? Has an analysis been done of that? Number 2, has an analysis been done as to the occupancy of these apartments? Are they absolutely full? Do we need more of this kind of taxpayer subsidy for these developers? Where do I get this information?
I don't know where you would get the total cost, because the cost would have to come in for, I guess it would be per person policing, per person fire, because, I mean, when you're talking about tax money that we're out, right? Because we're not out anything if they haven't been built. And then they build them.
You've given the tax break every year. As I understand it, a few years ago, when these developers
Are
came
you
in.
saying that we haven't, the dollars that we haven't collected? You'd
Yeah.
like to know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would suppose you could go up to the county treasurer's office and speak to
But what's the
Probably the
the
What's-
assessor.
But what's the procedure here? Do I have to go and find out every builder that has built a new apartment house in this town or given a subsidy from the city because they've taken an old building and fixed it up? How do I find all the new builders and so on?
Okay, so I'm gonna switch from apartments
Okay,
to residential properties. And Luke helped me out, but I think just a few weeks ago at council, we had a summary of the $75,000 tax abatement on new construction. And if I'm not mistaken, 200 properties have now fallen off the 5-year $75,000 tax abatement on that property and are now paying full taxes. So I understand your question, Jim, and I have been very adamant about reining in those breaks. Jason, help me out. I thought we had a 7-year.
It's a 7.
It's a 7-year.
7 years.
Okay, now, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, in a community, if you want to grow and you want to,
I'm not arguing that.
no,
I
wait,
just-
but let me hear you.
Okay.
I mean, you have to give contractors some incentives. We have to, or you will get no growth.
Understand.
Because a good man who knows a lot about code and those breaks would argue with me on this. And his name's Tom Kurth, very respectable man. He did developments and he says, we never got those. And I've told him 100 times, he says, Tom, if you don't give breaks to developers and contractors, if you don't give them incentives, you will not get growth in today's world. So my point on the houses is this. While they got $75,000 per year for the first 5 years, Dixie's probably one of them who got that, but now they've been there for over 5 years. They're now paying full taxes, and we got the growth, we've got a nice house, we've got responsible property owners.
This, Clark, was my second part of the question.
Okay.
Has there been an analysis done as to the occupancy of all these apartments that were built? Do we need more developers coming in and building buildings and giving them tax breaks when nobody's going to live in them?
Yes, there has been an occupancy study.
Where do I find that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark Gull's out in the hall there.
Yeah.
And maybe he can address it just a little bit better, because there have been studies. Mark, can
We
you?
did a housing needs assessment this last year, and we needed that for the Iowa Workforce Housing Tax Credit Program. And our occupancy in multifamily right now is above 95%. And I've got that study in my office if you want to stop by sometime.
Multifamily, how about the single apartments? Does that fall under that
That's
category?
Apartments are multifamily.
Yeah.
Okay,
Apartment buildings are considered, they're classified as multifamily.
okay.
Yeah,
It's
so-
not one dwelling for one
I mean, if
family.
you look at 12th Street, and those were all apartments that were built in the 60s, 70s, and maybe early 80s. None of those construction, apartment type complexes were built until like the late 2015, somewhere in there. And then we started the development out by Four Brothers, okay? Those were incentivized with a 7-year tax abatement. Those buildings would not have been built but for that abatement, and we made those lots very reasonably priced, okay? So when you say that they what have we cost in tax dollars, that's why I was saying you wouldn't know the figure unless you knew the, per capita rate to provide police for, these people are in our community, so we need to provide police protection, fire protection, we need to school these children.
But there's
So,
also no real measurement as to how much they're spending at the gas pump, at Fairway, Hy-Vee, Walmart, or.
I understand
So
that.
We
That's
can't measure that.
That's not what I'm looking for.
Okay, okay,
I understand that.
okay.
My question, I guess, is have we reached a threshold on these new buildings that we're giving these tax breaks where we actually don't need any more new apartment buildings? I mean, 3 or 4 have just popped up by the airport just this past year.
Jim,
Are we
Jim.
reaching a capacity?
Jim, Erdmanville is a good example. It's a pretty substantial, pretty large development company that's coming in.
100 units.
They would not be coming if there wasn't demand in this community.
Okay.
So, and as Mark said, the occupancy rate of better than 95%. Some developers like the Talon Group have recognized that there is still a need in our community for that. So it's, and I think maybe to your point about what without those abatements, the development wouldn't have happened, so we never would have captured any tax revenue from year 7 on.
I understand.
So,
Yeah.
I think the general point that I'm trying to make is that developers wouldn't be coming if there wasn't demand.
Yeah, I understand it. I just wondered where we were in the whole big scheme of
And,
things here.
and as you look at our community development plan, whether you like it or not, it calls for us to add, Mark, is it 200 or 300 houses per year, or units, excuse me?
190
It calls for us to add 190 units every year,
until 2045.
right? So,
2035? Oh.
but that's the community development plan. If we're to reach that, then we'll need to add 190 units each year to be able to get to that.
But I
That
think that
goal.
the idea is as long as they are filling,
Yeah.
no one will put on the brakes quicker if we start seeing a huge vacancy. As long as they're filling, I don't know that it's really on the radar.
Yeah, well,
One of the other things with regard to the tax collection that we saw with the increased assessments, the abatement was on the initial assessed value. So with the increased assessed value between the initial and where we're at today, that is taxable.
gotcha.
So we are collecting some taxes
Some
on
revenue.
some of those buildings
Sure.
And
that were
actually-
abated.
And actually, some of them have to be awfully close to falling off. We
Yeah.
gotta be getting close to the 7-year period where we'll start to see that cycle start to pay us because we gave them a break for a while.
Okay.
And one other thing is too, from a competitive standpoint, when you're looking at some of our neighboring communities, some of their abatements are even more aggressive than what we're doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
10-year, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, as I prefaced this was just an inquiry.
No, it's perfectly good.
that's why we wanted you to.
Thanks,
we
guys.
wanted
Is
to-
that a Westmark code?
Hey, Jim, if you have a few minutes, hang around afterwards.
Hi there.
Hi, Greg Gangler, 430 Lombardi Road. Watch your guys' council meetings religiously on YouTube because I can't get here for work. But I want to say that the community has developed a well-written plan on growth. I do have a few concerns with it, and that is, I've seen the parks and growing the parks and all the amenities to bring the people into the community. They all have to be maintained. That concern that I have is when we seen our last big growth, we had a lot of owned businesses locally. Mike Wells no longer owns Wells Blue Bunny. Tomorrow they can leave this community and not have a bone in it. Modine's used to be locally owned. Now it's corporate owned. Kemp's, corporate. My concern is, and back in the day when we had Rex up here, we bragged how our tax costs were lower than our surrounding communities. If we didn't have Mike Wells throwing into the community like he does, we would have the same tax costs. And these large organizations that support our community right now, but they're not stuck here. There's not that homegrown, I'm here for my life. So that is my concern with it. You know, we grow, we have to have the infrastructure, that's gonna cost us dollars. Again, back to his point before me, the tax revenue isn't coming in for a few years to pay for that infrastructure. And then we lose a big employer, and we're not seeing any big employers coming in. That's just my only concern with the plan, is trying to get that, you know, obviously everything's going corporate owned eventually, but making sure that we have that commitment from them as well. I know that Kemps and Wells are paying for some of the wastewater building. I do know that because I work with them. But what says I'm out? I'm no longer going to pay my payments. They're still paying for the last wastewater building, because all of a sudden our cost to keep our business in town is going too high for them, because we're using them to pay for everything. So that's just my concerns.
Thank you, Greg, I appreciate it. And please know that those are my same concerns too. And I think it was the first year I became mayor is when Wells made their announcement. And the reason behind this plan and the reason behind this growth is because the number one need for each of those entities, whether it's Wells, Kemps, whomever you name, is workforce. They need people to make their ice cream. And that's why we're trying to bring the people here. And so that they won't leave, and so that they are, you know, stuck here. And we can attract other businesses. I mean, right now, if we wanted to attract another manufacturer, another business, we can offer them some land, we can offer them some tax abatements, but we can't really offer them workforce. There isn't anybody that could work there. So that's why. I mean, and your concerns are valid, but it's a chicken and an egg kind of thing. I mean, I want to provide all the needs that Wells needs so that they are committed to stay here. And number one is a workforce. So.
Absolutely.
And I'd also mention that Mike and Cheryl have reinvested in this community immensely. I mean, they're taking some old buildings and turning them around and getting new businesses in there. They're not the major big businesses, but we have the Toro, we have some of the restaurants downtown. They haven't gone anywhere, so I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely, but we all leave this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Thank you,
all
Greg.
right. Thanks.
The other microphone, ma'am. Sorry.
I
Unless
just
you want to
want
be on the news tonight.
yeah, oh, well, I'll turn that way. I don't want to be on the news, really. But I do want to be so that you can hear me, because I am also a little bit financial concerned. And one of my concerns is with the parks, and I see the big plan for O'Toole Park, and I wouldn't say I was 100% against it, but I think that we have to realize that we're going to have a lot of ongoing expenses with the parks, the school grounds that we already have, because those 3 elementary school grounds, they're the playground for the kids that live in the neighborhood, and they are well used, and it would be a disaster, I think, for the city to just throw them away when we get the new school built and have a new playground, which is going to cost us a lot of money. And I think we should maintain our old playgrounds, because they're well used by the kids in the community, and we have very, very few green areas anymore for the kids, because I see these big buildings, the section down there by Walmart, or the section on 12th Street there, they're big buildings. There must be hundreds of people living in those, but there's not a green spot in any of that. The other day, I was at the dog park with my little dog, and I was talking to another lady who had a little dog that she was walking, and I asked her if she had kids, and she said, yeah, she had a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and she lived in those apartments. And I asked her, well, where do they play? And she said, well, they play either here in the dog park, which I thought wasn't really a very neat place to have your kids playing, or else they go up to Clark, because that's where they go to school, and so they play there, or out at the Little League ballpark. There's a playground area, but I don't know what the rest of them do, or if any of those people in those apartment complexes, if they don't have any dogs to walk, or if they don't have any kids, because there certainly isn't much there for them. And I think rather than making a splash pad and a covered shelter, we should keep a little of that money in reserve for the new playground that we will need for the elementary kids.
Can I have your name and address? Thank you.
What?
Can I have your name and address, ma'am?
Oh, didn't I give you that?
No, sorry.
Nadine Benabus, and I live on 1720 Sunset Drive. So I'm not too far from Cluckholm.
Oh, okay.
And I have this concern also of, now when I drive past there, I try and stay away at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when all the traffic is trying to pick up their kids. So I don't know how that's all gonna play out, but.
Well, thank you, Ms. Binup.
Yes.
We